Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck. And of course, that means hopefully some smart talk radio is in your future. And I think this segment will certainly be no exception. An interesting work, one that's going to make you think a little bit here. It's called Hard Drive, A Family's Fight Against Three Countries. It is the captivating story of Dr. Shane Truman Todd's mysterious death and his family's subsequent battle to reveal the truth. Mary Todd is going to be joining us today, an interesting person in her own right. She is a pastor of the Pomona Baptist Satellite Church in Marion, Montana. She's also earned her MA in Organizational Leadership from Azusa Pacific University, where she also served as assistant campus pastor there. The story of her son has been in the Financial Times, on CNN, ABC, CBS, Fox, etc., and we are very pleased to have her here. Mary Todd, how are you, my friend?
I am doing well, Warner, and thank you for having me on your show.
You bet. Let's do this. For those Lewis at Large listeners in Northeast Kansas that do not know this story, if you would, give us some brief background, if you would, not only about who Dr. Shane Truman Todd was, but also but tell us about his death, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, my son Shane was a Renaissance man, a brilliant young man that played rugby with all his heart and was a scientist. He was a PhD in electrical engineering, and he went to Singapore to work for a company called IME, mainly because he wanted an adventure. And so after working for a while, about a year and a half with IME, he started getting concerned that he was being asked to compromise U.S. security with the technology that he was working on. And he decided to quit his job and come back to the United States. He did quit his job. He had a job waiting for him. And from that point on, he started calling home and saying, "Mom, I think that my life is being threatened." He said, "I'm not sure. I might be overreacting, but I have this sense." And he told me that if I didn't hear from him every week, to email him right away. If he didn't call me, that I should call the American Embassy. Well, my son was murdered on his last day of work. He was garroted, which is strangled, and with a wire, and hung on a door. And we were called by his girlfriend, and we were told by the Singapore authorities that he committed suicide.
What, and again, this may sound obvious, but again, fill some holes in for us here. Why would, and again, the understanding was that what you found you thought was a computer speaker was actually an external hard drive with files from his computer containing information on a U.S. security breach his company was asking him to perform. Tell us the motivation you believe behind those people that wanted to see him gone. What was their motivation? What were they covering up?
Well, for one, Shane was the leader of a specialized technology. It's called GAN. It's a highly specialized new semiconductor technology with both civilian and military application. To work on this technology, Shane had to sign an export license, which meant that he could not transfer it to countries that it was not allowed to go to, such as China. When he started working with this Chinese company, which is called Huawei, it's the largest manufacturer of telecommunications equipment in the world, and he realized that the technology he had was military application. He knew right there that if he gave this technology to China, he would be compromising U.S. security, and he would be a traitor to our country. He knew all the players. He knew it was illegal. He quit his job, and they had to eliminate him because if he came back to the United States with the information that he had, that would be bad for IME and Huawei.
When you tell me your first move, obviously you were in a period of incredible grief, shock, all of that, that whole process. But as that either sort of took its place or got into perspective, what were your first moves after that?
Well, we didn't know what had happened until we got to Singapore. We flew immediately. My son and my husband are airline pilots, so we got on the first flight out of Montana and got to Singapore within 48 hours. And we knew right away when they handed us the suicide notes that they found on my son's computer, and they were written in not only not in my son's vernacular, but they were not written in an American's vernacular. It was completely foreign to me. I knew he didn't commit suicide, and that was later substantiated by two linguistic experts who said that an American didn't write it, much less Shane. But we knew that we were dealing with murder, and we knew that we had to do something. And so we started right there in Singapore, even before we picked up our son's body, we started really looking into things. When we got Shane home, we found that his body was riddled with defensive wounds. So we had a pathologist look at the pictures of his body and also his toxology and pathology reports, and he said he was murdered, he was strangled with a wire garroted, and those are defensive wounds. It had to have been 2 men. So we knew we were onto something, but it wasn't until we found Shane's hard drive and what I thought was a Mac speaker from his apartment. We just threw it in a bag, and one day, 2 weeks after my son's funeral, my husband said, "You know that Mac speaker? I think that could be an external hard drive." So he opened it up, and sure enough, Shane had backed up all of his files onto his computer that went to his external hard drive. And we had a computer forensic expert analyze it, and he found that it was accessed after Shane's death, and it was those highly sensitive Huawei IME files that were accessed. Shane had been dead for 4 days when this had been accessed, and that's when we started really researching the relationship between IME and Huawei.
So now you're in a real conundrum here. So what authorities do you contact? What's your next move after that? What happens? Or do you become scared yourself?
Well, later on we did become scared, but at that point we weren't. We contacted the Singapore police, we contacted our U.S. Embassy, we contacted our State Department, we contacted ISA, we contacted anybody that we could think of, our elected officials, our senators, our congressmen. We flew to Washington. Well, actually, we didn't fly to Washington, D.C. until later. It wasn't until a man named Ray Bonner, an investigative reporter who started tracking our story, and he got the Financial Times to take interest, and they really researched what we were purporting, and they did, I think it was a 7-page spread in their magazine. And from that point, we got the attention of Washington, D.C. We got the attention of all the people that we wanted, the FBI. And we flew to Washington and met with Congressman Wolf, Congressman Daines, Senator Baucus, and Senator Tester. And we know that the president was alerted of this. And we thought, we're done, that this is great. And, we gave the FBI Shane's external hard drive for their examination. And at one point, we noticed people, one after the other, started shutting us down, other than Congressman Wolf and Congressman Daines. Senator Baucus tracked with us and helped us so much until the day that he became ambassador to China.
Did you, and again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis here from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. We're in the midst of a segment with Mary Todd. She is a pastor by trade. She's also an international speaker and on leadership and a variety of other topics. But specifically today, we're talking about a unique story called Hard Drive, a family's fight against 3 countries. It is the captivating story of Dr. Shane Truman Todd's death and his family's subsequent battle to find, seek, and reveal the truth. Mary, okay, so now you've got a lot of people are alerted. The wraps have come off, so to speak. There's a light now shining into this dark corner. What kinds of things were you able to find out?
Nothing. Everything we found out on our own, and we prepared for an inquiry into our son's death that was set up in Singapore, and we believed that inquiry would find that for sure that he was murdered. I will say that when sitting in Congressman Wolf's office from Virginia, he had done a lot of research. He was on a committee for the Huawei Research Council because they were very concerned about the technology. They'd already stolen technology from our country, and they knew that they had been involved with the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese Communist Party, and they had grave concerns for the U.S., so Congressman Wolf was very interested in our story. And I said to him, Congressman Wolf, we have concrete proof that our son was murdered. Why isn't our country doing anything? And he said, Mary, you are doing the right thing, but you're not going to get anywhere. And I was flabbergasted, and I said, why? And he told me, because Huawei owns a law firm on every corner. Now, there's a chapter in our book, Hard Drive, called A Law Firm on Every Corner. And Congressman Wolf wrote a foreword to our book. He is stuck with us like glue. He knows what has happened to our son. He knows why. And so when we got to the inquiry, we were shut down completely. The state of Singapore hired 10 top lawyers. Well, state had 5 and IME had 5. We had 2 pro bono lawyers that we later believe, we have not proved this, were hired by the state. And it was a complete 100% sham. And after that, really no one wanted to talk to us because the verdict was suicide.
Who do you, just point blank, are you at a point where, A, you know, B, you have a strong feeling, do you believe you know who murdered your son? And if not a specific individual, a specific organization, entity, group, etc.?
Well, I do not know who murdered Shane, but if you read Hard Drive, A Family's Fight Against 3 Countries, you will certainly see who had the motivation to kill my son. I at this point, you know, I have my suspicions, but I cannot say. I know, in my mind, IME and Huawei certainly were involved in the murder of my son, but I do not know.
Now that the story is getting out more and more, are those 2 organizations, are they being peppered by the media at this point? No,
not that I know of. We do have some people still investigating, but we have concrete proof on Shane's external hard drive on his computers of the relationship between IME and Huawei, the military application. We have it all. And our FBI, who has looked at the computer, said they found nothing suspicious. Now, that in itself is very suspicious. And not only that, after the inquiry into Shane's death, our State Department called the inquiry comprehensive, fair, and transparent, which is ludicrous. And that is why we had to write this book, because the book is not only a fascinating tale. I mean, it reads like a John Grisham novel. We have had reviews that say it's just an incredible read, but it's true. And it shows, we prove every point that we make in this book. We back up what we say with facts. And for our State Department to call this inquiry into my son's death comprehensive, fair, and transparent is a travesty of justice.
Have you, again, in your travels and just the work that you've done and the speaking and the exposure that you've had, have you heard from other families or other organizations with tales that are somewhat similar to yours?
I'm so glad you asked that, Warner. Our next book is going to be other people's stories that do not have a hard drive. The only reason we have a platform is because of Shane's external hard drive. I have heard from numerous families whose sons or daughters have been killed overseas under suspicious circumstances, and they have faced exactly what we've faced with our country and whatever foreign country they were in. Specifically, China is a big one. There's several from China, but there's other countries too, and they have contacted us, and we have heard these heartbreaking stories, and they have also had proof that their child was murdered and been told that they were run over by a car or a truck, or, you know, it's just ridiculous. So what we'd like to do after Hard Drive gets out there, we're hoping to have a platform where we can tell other people's stories and warn the American people about what is happening in our government, why our government is covering this stuff up, and how it's very dangerous for your child to travel overseas, you know, thinking they're going to have a great adventure. It's something to take a second thought about.
What about the remainder, the other members of your family? I know you're very proactive and you're very, very busy with lots of things. You're obviously driven by this, and totally understandably. Are other members of the family, are they continuing on with their sort of investigation and continuing to tell the story? Who's kind of leading the charge here?
Well, my niece, Christina Villegas, she has her PhD in politics. She's the one that wrote the book with me, and her parents have been amazing. They're our biggest supporters. My husband and I work as a partnership, and so I think that we're the main ones that are driving this investigation to continue. And actually, we're not driving for the investigation. We feel we did our investigative work, and it's all in our book. We're driving for this to be known to the American people and to get our story out there and to try to, exonerate my son and to tell the truth and to get Americans to realize that there is a fight for justice here, and there has been an injustice done that they need to know about because we're not the only ones.
What, if you could, boy, what would you tell the United States government right now? Where they've obviously, in your opinion, fallen way, way short. You do have some friends there, up, as they say, on the Hill. But what's the primary issue here? What's the big picture message you want to make sure everyone learns from this?
Well, my biggest concern is our relationship with China and how we have allowed them to buy us out. According to Congressman Wolf, several people are in office because of the donations made from that country, and they can't turn their back on China. China is a very dangerous country, and they are stealing our technology. And so I think what I would say to our government is if we don't turn around and look at what we're doing down the road, we are not going to be the greatest nation in the world. We are not going to be. We're going to be run by another nation. And so that is what I would tell our country: stop and turn around. It's not too late. And I would also warn the American people, there are cover-ups going on, such as Benghazi, that are so grave, so serious, so deep. Do not believe everything you hear from our government, and really research everything for yourself. Don't take it at face value.
Do you see this as necessary? Does it make a difference, in your opinion, who's sitting in the White House, or is this could be anytime, anywhere?
I do believe it makes a difference who's sitting in the White House. I believe that I know that Joe Biden has read a report about my son's inquiry into his death. It's a 20-page report written by a man who is the honorary consul to Singapore in Texas, and he wrote how fallacious the whole report, inquiry report was. It was a 169-page report of just complete sham. And I know that our president knows of our son's death, and I know that they have chosen to brush it under the carpet because the cost is too high for our country to actually face this stuff, and it's a nobody to them. But our ambassador to Benghazi wasn't a nobody, and it's being pushed under the carpet. So I've got to believe that this administration has their eyes on something bigger. Power and money is what I believe that has caused them to do the wrong thing.
Well, it is a difficult story indeed, whether you look at it as a political one, you look at it as a human one, and the human tragedy here is very real. It's the work is called Hard Drive: A Family's Fight Against Three Countries by Mary Todd and Dr. Christina Villegas. It is about son Dr. Shane Truman Todd, found hanging in his Singapore apartment just a few years ago, and all the implications of that as well. It is a very interesting, if not difficult, read for sure. Mary, how can people find out more about the story and the work that you're doing on this, and how can they get a copy of the book?
The book is on Amazon, and we also have it on shanesharddrive.com, and it's coming out in bookstores. Mainly, it will start coming out in all bookstores in April, but we hope people get it before that because we'd really like them to read. I am available for speaking engagements. I'm traveling around speaking on this story, and love to do that. So if people could, that's the best way to support our family right now is to get this book and to read it. And I promise you it's a fascinating read. They will not be disappointed.
Well, listen, thank you so much for taking time today. I know you're very, very busy, but sharing this story with us, and best of luck to you and the family in the future.
Warner, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and you have a great day.
You bet. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.